In 2009, BlackBerry controlled 50% of the United States smartphone market. By 2016, that number was 0.3%, not a decline, a disappearance. The question isn't what went wrong. The question is, how do you see it coming and still do nothing? To understand the fall, you have to understand what BlackBerry actually was. In the late 1990s, a Canadian company called Research in Motion released a device that genuinely changed how the world communicated. It wasn't a phone. It was a pager that could send emails securely, instantly from anywhere. That sounds modest now. In 1999, it was witchcraft. Corporate executives who had never cared about technology were suddenly addicted to a small black device with a physical keyboard they could type on with their thumbs. Wall Street called it Crackberry. That nickname was not a joke. By the mid-2000s, BlackBerry had penetrated every level of power. Barack Obama famously refused to give his up when he entered the White House, forcing the Secret Service to create a specially encrypted version just for him. When the President of the United States negotiates to keep your product, you have built something significant. Revenue at Research in Motion grew from roughly $300 million in fiscal 2004 to over $6 billion by 2008. The stock price rose nearly 1,500% across that period. Co-CEOs Mike Lazaridis and Jim Balsillie were celebrated as visionaries. Lazaridis was named one of Time magazine's 100 most influential people. The awards were coming in faster than the warning signs. And there were warning signs. As early as 2005, internal engineers at RIM were raising concerns about the direction of the consumer market. Phones were becoming multimedia devices. Cameras, music players, touchscreens. BlackBerry's hardware was built for enterprise security, not entertainment. The gap was widening. Management noted the concern and moved on. Then, on January 9, 2007, Steve Jobs walked onto a stage in San Francisco and introduced the iPhone. He called it a revolutionary product that was 5 years ahead of anything else. That was marketing language, obviously, but the core claim was not entirely wrong. Mike Lazaridis watched the keynote. His reported reaction, relayed by multiple former executives and documented in journalists' accounts of that period, was that Apple had made a beautiful device with a fatal flaw. The touchscreen keyboard was inefficient. The battery would drain. The network couldn't handle real data loads. He was technically correct on several points. He was catastrophically wrong about what it meant. Being right about the flaws and wrong about the trajectory is one of the most expensive mistakes in business history. The iPhone wasn't just a product. It was a signal about where consumer expectations were heading. BlackBerry dismissed the signal and graded the product. A subtle distinction, a fatal one. Jim Balsillie, the other half of the co-CEO structure, had a different concern. He reportedly believed that the iPhone, lacking a physical keyboard, would never appeal to serious business users. BlackBerry's core market. The logic was coherent. The logic was also about to become irrelevant because serious business users were about to become consumers first. Internally, RIM was not standing completely still. They began developing touchscreen prototypes. They explored a new operating system architecture. But the pace was organizational, meaning slow, committee-driven, and constantly deprioritized in favor of protecting the existing enterprise business that was still, for the moment, printing money. It is difficult to burn down a profitable building, even when you know it is going to collapse. In 2008, the App Store launched. Within a year, Apple had 65,000 applications available for download. This was not a feature. This was an ecosystem. An entire economic layer built on top of the hardware. Developers weren't just writing software. They were building businesses inside Apple's platform. BlackBerry had no equivalent answer. Then Android arrived. Google's open-source mobile operating system was adopted by Samsung, HTC, Motorola. Suddenly, BlackBerry wasn't fighting one premium competitor. It was fighting an entire alliance of manufacturers with nearly unlimited hardware variety, and a developer ecosystem growing at a pace RIM's internal teams couldn't match. RIM's response in 2010 was the BlackBerry Torch, a hybrid device touchscreen combined with a physical slide-out keyboard. A compromise. Reviewers noted it was trying to be two things and wasn't quite either. The sales numbers confirmed the reviews. In a market that had moved to full touchscreen experiences, the Torch sold modestly. RIM called the launch successful. Their definition of success was adjusting. In 2011, RIM released the Playbook tablet. The device launched without a native email client, a BlackBerry product marketed to BlackBerry's core audience of email-dependent professionals, shipped without a standalone email application. It required tethering to a BlackBerry phone to access email. The board approved this. Of course they did. The Playbook was eventually discontinued. By that point, RIM's market share in smartphones had collapsed from 50% in 2009 to roughly 5% by 2013. Revenues fell from a peak of nearly $20 billion in fiscal 2012 to under $7 billion by 2014. $11 billion in revenue, gone in 2 years. The company began laying off thousands of employees. Lazaridis and Balsillie resigned as co-CEOs in January 2012. They were replaced by Thorsten Heinz, who announced with confidence that there was nothing wrong with the company's strategy. He said, and this is a direct quotation, that BlackBerry did not need a turnaround. Heinz was fired 22 months later. The turnaround, it turned out, had been somewhat necessary. The last credible attempt at salvation was BlackBerry 10, a ground-up rebuild of the operating system. Engineers who worked on it describe it as technically impressive, a genuine rethinking of the mobile interface with strong security architecture. It launched in January 2013. By then, the app ecosystem gap was insurmountable. Developers weren't building for BlackBerry 10. Without apps, the hardware didn't matter. Without the hardware moving units, developers wouldn't build. The circle closed against them. In September 2013, a consortium of investors offered to take the company private for $4.7 billion. In 2008, RIM's market capitalization had touched $83 billion. The math on that is not complicated. $83 billion to $4.7 billion in 5 years. An estimated 94% destruction of shareholder value in a single business cycle. By 2016, BlackBerry had exited the hardware business entirely, licensing the brand to third-party manufacturers and pivoting to enterprise software and security services, which, to be fair, it still operates today. The irony is elegant. The thing BlackBerry was always best at, secure communications infrastructure, is the thing that survived. The consumer ambition that came too late is what buried them. The lesson BlackBerry teaches is not about disruption. Disruption is the easy narrative. The harder truth is that BlackBerry had the resources, the talent, and the market intelligence to respond to the iPhone. They had years of warning. They chose comfort over adaptation because the business was still profitable enough to make denial feel reasonable. That is not a technology failure. That is a leadership failure dressed in technology language. The most dangerous moment for any dominant company is not when a competitor looks better than them. It is when a competitor changes what customers believe they deserve. BlackBerry never understood that the iPhone wasn't competing with their product. It was competing with their customers' imagination. By the time they grasped that, the imagination had already moved on. Next time, we go inside the collapse of Sears, a company that had 118 years, a catalog business that invented e-commerce before the internet existed and still managed to lose everything. Subscribe for more hidden empires.